Hey guys, Anna here and
Analeisa Latham.
perfect. And we're both from the Haro Group, and that's in Greenville, South Carolina. And I was the ISA back in the day, and Annalisa was the listing agent at that time. So we're here today to talk to you about how to have quality communication between ISAs and agents. That's a question we get all the time of how do we have good relationships? How do we have trust? How do you hand off a lead when you're ready to set an appointment? All of those things. So we're going to start off with an interview to Annalisa, just asking her some questions about her experience on the team. And then after about 30 minutes, we'll open it up to Q&A. If you have something you want to say, hey, Taylor, if you have something that you want to say, go ahead and type it in the chat box, and we'll keep our eye on that as we go. And then we'll hit those questions in about 30 minutes. Sound good? Perfect. Okay, so Annalisa,
Yes.
a lot of people say, where do you find quality talent for ISAs? But also just in general, where do I find talented people? And you are an extremely talented person. So tell us, how did you come to the Haro Group? How did he find you? Tell us about that.
Okay, great. So I had been working in real estate marketing for about 2 years and just started looking for other opportunities. And what actually was freelancing for an agent. One day I saw on her Facebook, as I was doing some social media for her, that Haro had posted out that he was looking for talent. So I thought, oh yeah, this guy, I can tell he's a mover and a shaker. Surely he needs somebody helping with marketing. So I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, I saw your ad. I'm looking for a new opportunity. Here's my resume. And actually come to find out, I had gone to high school with someone else on the team. So definitely had sphere connections there as well. But anyway, we sat down, of course, had a long interview process, doing a whole career visioning. And he originally offered me one position that just wasn't a right fit for me at the time. But then a couple months later came back and was like, I've got this. And I said, okay, let's go. Let's do this.
Perfect. And I'm curious, what made you, because you could have worked a lot of places. She's very talented. I'm confident a lot of teams would have been thrilled to have her. What attracted you to the Haro Group? And let me interject real quick. One thing I've learned through coaching is sometimes I'll hear people say in that coaching call where there's that element of trust, I hear the vulnerability of, why would someone come work for my team? And maybe that's not something that we walk around saying all the time, but what I've learned through coaching is I think a lot of people walk around wondering that in the back of their mind of, why would someone join my team? What's my value add? Especially if it's your first hire. And so talk about what did attract you to the Haro Group. And first of all, I want you guys to know you're not alone if you do think that. That comes up a lot, actually. And then educate us on what did make you choose the Haro Group out of all the places you could have worked.
I think it was a couple different things. There's an internal drive in me that just wants to be with the best. I had no sales experience, and I knew that if I was going to become the best, I needed to be with the best. And just after sitting with Haro and really realizing what kind of human he was, just interacting with him, I was like, this is where I need to be if I'm going to learn how to be in this industry. And also the value add that I knew I would get from him. I knew I wasn't going to be wearing all the different hats that every realtor out there wears. And I was confident that if he was interviewing me to the level he was, the people he also had working for him that were going to be working alongside me also had to be top talent. There was just no doubt in my mind that if I go there, I'm going to succeed.
Yeah. And I want to point out something she just said is the level of interviewing that you went through gave you that assurance. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk later about the importance of trust between ISA, agent, and really everybody on the team. And I'll say the same thing. When Annalisa came to the team, I was already on the team, and I felt a lot of comfort realizing how difficult it is to go through that interview process and how long it takes. It gave me that comfort that, okay, if this chick is joining the team, she clearly is going to be a good fit, because it's no joke to join this team. So if you're ever tempted to short circuit the hiring process, don't, because it will help you make sure you're finding good talent. It builds confidence in the person you're hiring that it's a good fit. And it can help those other teammates have that confidence, because you as the team owner are doing your due diligence of going through that hiring process. That's really important. So tell us, what did you like about, well, tell us the team structure when you joined. We're a lot bigger now. There's way more people on the team. when we were doing this, it was, I guess, 2014 was when I was the ISA setting appointments for Analeisa. The team was a lot smaller. So tell us, what was the team like when you joined? And then we'll jump into what our relationship was like and some of the fun and pains that we had.
Absolutely. So when I first joined, Haro was our rainmaker, obviously still is. He was taking the majority of the listings. Anna was the only ISA at that point in time. There was a buyer agent, and they had just brought on, I think, 3 others. And then we had a listing manager and a transaction coordinator. And then I think maybe another admin helping out to fill in some of the other holes that they had. So I was hired to come in really and take over the listing process from Haro so that he could move really to the next level. And that was the main setup then. And like Anna said, now it's huge. We have 30 people. So definite growth since that time.
Definitely. And we've both moved into the coaching role. So I coach full-time now for MAPS for the ISA coaching program. And Analeisa is now one of our coaches. She just joined us and she's doing a great job. And one reason I wanted to have her on our coaching team is within the Haro Group, we coach each other. And I heard feedback that the people she coached always were doing really well on their goals. And I knew from interacting with Analeisa, she's a great question asker. And so that really made me want to have her join our coaching team. So she's now with the MAPS ISA coaching team as well. So that's kind of a side note. So anyway, tell us, what did you like about working with an ISA? And then we'll jump into what some of the challenges were.
Awesome. One of the biggest things that I loved about working with an ISA was because I had someone feeding me leads and filling my calendar with appointments. That gave me a lot of time freedom in other areas of life. So I was able to serve my clients at a higher level because obviously I was still lead generating, but I didn't have to do the same degree. And then I think just another thing is just having someone else that I knew was there as a resource for me. I walked into an extremely experienced ISA who taught me language of sales and all kinds of different things. So that was another huge benefit. For me personally, obviously a very unique situation of working with Anna. But really the biggest thing would be adding time to my day by helping me generate leads.
Yeah. And so this actually touches back to the last webinar we did. So if this is your first time joining us for a webinar, if you go to isamapscoaching.com, you'll see a bank of some previous webinars that we've hosted. And the very last one was, why do you need to hire? How do you hire an ISA? And we touch on something she just mentioned is time. So we know, and research proves, that if you call a lead at least 6 times, there's a 90% chance that they'll pick up the phone or call you back. So if you're dealing with a high volume of leads, tell everybody how many listings you had your first year.
Well, my first full year, I closed on 75 transactions. So it took probably 110 listings.
Yeah. So she took 110 listings her first year. That's the power of a team, by the way. But also, if you're dealing with 110 listings, do you have time to call every new lead that comes in 6 times?
No way. Absolutely not. There's no way in the world.
Yeah. So then that's where you, if you're a team owner here, or say you're over the ISA department, part of your job is to watch, where are we leaking money? I think about it like a bucket that you're carrying around that's got holes in it. And your job is to figure out, where are we splashing water everywhere? Where is the water coming out? Where are the holes that our business is losing money? And you could have extremely talented people. Analeisa is extremely talented at converting leads. Yet if you don't have the bandwidth to be calling every new lead at least 6 times, you're losing money. It's not a skill issue at that point. It's a time issue. And in that vein, tell us, what was the schedule? So yeah, you had an ISA lead generating, but what did you do?
You mean just like on a daily basis, or?
Yeah, like what was so sometimes people think the ISA, I'll let them do the lead generation.
Oh, no. So still every morning, we had a weekly or daily team meeting every morning. And right after that, we were all on phones. So it's not like Anna was the only person generating these. I was on the phone, 2 hours at least every single day.
Yeah. And we want to highlight, because that is a key factor. One thing I've noticed with traveling or just working with different teams is the teams that are doing an excellent job have the habit of, even if you're an agent, in the morning, you have a lead generation business. I've heard MAPS coach Abe Shreve say, in the morning, you have a lead generation business until noon, and then you handle a real estate business afternoon. And I saw Analeisa display that. And also, this webinar is about how to build trust between ISAs and agents. I have to think you making lead gen calls for 2 hours gave that understanding of, okay, what is the ISA role like? It wasn't just, we're going to give that to that person. It gave a perspective.
Yeah, totally. And also a lot of respect too, that I feel like I gained from you, knowing, I'm on the phone for a couple hours a day, and Anna's job was to do it for the majority of the day. And that meant that she was getting a ton of awesome experience to set some really fabulously qualified leads. And then just also watching her model the daily, and listening to her calls was extremely helpful to me as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we can miss is I hear frequently, and this is part of why we have a training program and we're passionate about this, is we want to help people get the ISA role right. Is I hear a lot of people say, well, let's just find some entry-level person and throw them in the role and see what they do. And if Gary Keller teaches us in tactic 5 of shift, I think it's page 108. I know I'm a nerd. I'm pretty sure it's page 108. He teaches us that lead generation is the most dollar productive activity that we can be doing. And then lead conversion is the most business critical activity. And those are Gary Keller's words. And so that person is doing it all day. So in that thing, they probably have more experience and more skill than an agent, just like Analeisa is better at writing contracts and negotiating deals. I would have no idea what to do with that if I got a contract placed in my lap today. And that's the beauty of a team, is you get really, really, really skilled at your one thing. And Analeisa is skilled with lead gen and mostly the conversion from, okay, now we're at the table. She can convert leads all day long. I know for a while there, our conversion rate was over 90% signing ratio. Pretty consistently. So think about if you were able to get people to sign an agreement with you 90% of the time. That's her track record. And by the way, we had people meet us at the office. So now you have people coming to the office and over 90% of them are hiring you. She's really good at that. However, if I did that, my conversion rate probably wouldn't be as high because I've never done it. So I just want to drive home the point. The value of a team is you get really good at your one thing. And you just kind of hit on that in an indirect way.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what were some of the challenges, and then I'll share what did I like about having an agent to work with in those challenges. So what were some of the challenges you found in working with an ISA?
I think probably one of the biggest is initially building trust. So I would say that was a smaller upfront type thing. But obviously large. I had to trust that Anna was putting me in front of somebody who had the ability to even sign a contract that day, a listing agreement that day. And on the flip side, Anna had to trust that I could get him to sign that listing agreement. That's a big thing, and it does not come overnight. Like, I remember struggles that we had just communication wise, that we were obviously able to overcome with the statistics she was just sharing. But getting to the point of realizing how good she was at her job and her, seeing me produce the same results. Trust is huge. And I would say very, very, very closely tied to that would be communication. Anna was so great about connecting with people on the phone. She has the ability to small talk like I don't. Like, I'm a get to the point, get it done kind of girl. But she was able to kind of soften the beginning of that process by really connecting well with people on the phone. And that was one of the things I appreciated so much, is all over the sheet that she would pass on to me after she had set an appointment for me was just random stuff that had nothing to do with the house, but I knew how she had connected with this person, so then I could find some point of commonality really without even ever having talking to this person.
Yeah,
I would kind of know what questions to ask based on what she had come across in her findings with the small talk type things. And then also I would say, we call it our blue sheet, that we would that Anna would fill out as she was setting appointments for me. And I knew, I knew everything about that house. If we were bringing them in the office, we had to know more than everything, as it were, what kind of upgrades they've done, what the square footage actually is. Down to the most minute detail, we had to know about it. So that kind of communication and being sure that I was prepared with all of those details is really what gave me the success to convert 90% of those. If she hadn't given me that information, it would have been much more challenging.
Yeah. And we're going to hang out here for just a minute about pre-qualification. So if you're here and able to type into the chat box, what is your team standard, whether you're an ISA or even an agent, what do you have to know before you meet with the client? I think that's a key question. Whether you're setting appointments for yourself or whether you're setting appointments for somebody else, what is your standard for what you have to know before you actually go out and meet people or have them come in? We had something, and I'm sharing this with you so that you can have an idea to follow if you don't have an idea or a system right now. But we had something called the blue sheet that she mentioned. But basically, it was a pre-qualification document. If you've taken Bold, you've seen something similar to this. Ours came from Bold. And it basically had everything that you need to know about a client to figure out, is this a good client to meet with? We all know, if you've worked in real estate for more than a day, that not everybody that you talk to that wants to buy or sell a house is prepared to. They might have just had a bankruptcy, or maybe their house is not worth what they paid for it, and they're not in a position that they're ready to move and lose money on the house. There could be 1,000 things. And so it's important that you have some type of pre-qualification process that you screen people through. And I kind of looked at it like I was the bouncer. Annalisa's busy. She's also talented. And who are we not helping if her time is filled with people that are pointless? What are we doing? And so I thought of it like a bouncer of, you're not getting on her calendar unless that pre-qualification sheet is filled out. To the best of our ability, we can see that you are pre-qualified. Now, she still had some sales work to do, you know, and that's where the handoff takes place. Is I needed to give her an easy layup, but it's still her job to get the ball in the basket, if we want to make a basketball analogy here. So if I am doing a good job on my end, and I'll give you some tips in a few minutes of how you can do that well, it should make it that she has a much less resistance to getting the signature, because she's been built up so much and her track record's been talked about. Do you remember, I'm wondering if you remember this, way back on her first day of taking listings. So Haro had trained her. I think you're going to remember as soon as I tell you the story. Haro had trained her, and we were all in this room setting appointments together, and I had talked to a lead, and I didn't know much about her ability as a listing agent, but I did know that she had a strong work ethic. I knew she was very determined. I knew that she was somebody who would fight hard to defend the people she was representing, even though she had never taken a listing. So on this appointment, when I was setting it, I decided to highlight what I did know that was true. And I said, you're going to love Annalisa. She's really great with people. She's got a strong work ethic. She's very determined. She's going to have your back in the negotiations. And I set the appointment for Annalisa. Well, Annalisa got sick. And I had to call this client the day of the appointment and say, remember now?
I do remember.
I had to call the client and say, I just want to let you know, before you come in, you're going to meet Haro, not Annalisa. I just don't want you to be surprised. Now, what they don't know is she's never taken a listing. This is her first appointment. Haro trained her. It's called the Haro Group, right? These people flipped out, and they were like, no, we need to see Annalisa. We don't want to see Haro. We want to meet Annalisa. And I remember people in the room just laughing, and she remembers it now. But the point I'm telling you that story for is that's what can happen when you're an ISA setting an appointment for an agent. Figure out, even if they've never taken a listing, what does her character, what can I highlight about this person to get the client excited to meet her? And that makes an easy layup. These people were upset to meet with Haro and not Annalisa, and they had never met her. They had never talked to her. All that happened is they heard about her when we were setting the appointment. That's the power you have. So you do have control. Get ready to write this down. The things that an ISA has total control over is contact to set ratio. So for every person I talk to, what percentage of them do I set? You also have total control over from setting it to making sure it shows up, whether that's in the house or in the office. And my job, 100% is mine until they get in the door. Once they're in the door, I hear some people say, well, now it's totally on the agent. And I would actually argue it's 50-50. Because getting the signature is partially my responsibility if I've laid it up correctly. She's never going to get a signature if I haven't passed her, or she's never going to get she's never going to dunk the ball, or what do you call it when you're, I can't remember the term right now. But But if I give her a layup, that's what it's called, a layup.
Yeah, a layup.
She can't get that if I don't pass her the ball. So it's not all her and it's not all me. It's us working together. And I just heard a true story recently about how in the Olympics, in the last races, we were the fastest team. However, we dropped the baton in the handoff. And the person telling the story said most failures in a race happen during the handoff. So you can be the fastest team, or in our world, maybe you could be the most skilled ISA or the most skilled agent. But if that handoff doesn't happen smoothly, you could have a failure. And that is where most races are lost, is when that baton gets passed. And so make sure you're doing that handoff really, really well. So what else, if anything, do you have to add to that part of the conversation?
I mean, I think those are the biggest things. Another thing that maybe you're going to hit on this, I think, is as an agent, remembering to go back to the person who set that appointment for you and tell them the outcome. And, you know, there were times where that was the last thing that I wanted to do because, you know, obviously Anna and I grew a relationship and I didn't want to tell her that I let her down by not converting this lead or whatever. And obviously always was super gracious with her response. But if you think about it, the ISAs who are on the phone all day, like that, they're developing relationships. They want to know what's happened, what the outcome has been, and keeping them in the loop, keeping them engaged. Like that was huge. You know, especially coming from Anna, like I knew she actually cared about these people at a really deep level, even from just a 20, 30, 40-minute phone call. So remembering to go back and tell her, here's what happened, those types of things was like really, really key for us to succeed together.
Yeah. And we're going to have a candid moment. She's probably like, oh no. Yeah. No, but if you're not in this group, there's a group called ISA Mastermind Group. And it's a group we started years and years ago. But as a moderator in that group, I think that people see me as like the safe place where they can talk to and send a private message to. And I frequently get messages of people saying from that group, can I talk to you about something? I know you don't know me, but I'm in the Facebook group and I'm considering leaving my team. And the main reason why is I don't ever get feedback. So if you think about this, you guys, you're hiring people that are results oriented. If they're going to be any good at this job in any way, shape, or form, they're going to be results oriented. So imagine, just put yourself in those shoes for just a minute. Imagine that you're a results oriented person and your total job is to get something started and then you're going to hand it off. Imagine being a results oriented person, but never finding out what happened after that handoff. Would you stay? I have to say, if we had not figured that out, and the Haro Group, we eventually had a really good system for this because that was a pain point. I wouldn't have stayed. And it wasn't because I don't like the Haro Group. I love the Haro Group. It's one of those, how can you go to a job every day and work that hard and be a results-oriented person and not get feedback? You have to know what happens to your appointments. The other thing is, I don't know how to help people succeed if they don't know that conversion ratio. So what I mean by that is, say that you want to make $100,000 as an ISA, and maybe $24,000 of that is your base pay. That means you have about $76,000 in commission that you need to earn. I need to know my conversion rate all the way through to closing. If I'm only tracking contact to set or set to held, but I don't know, did they sign? I don't know if they're closing. How can I ever mathematically predict what I need to do to earn the closings? I don't get paid for setting an appointment. The company doesn't get paid. I don't get paid for a signature. The Haro Group doesn't get paid for a signature. We get paid when there's closings. And so forget the feelings for a minute. Just say that you have an ISA that says, I don't care, emotionally, I don't need to know what happens, which they probably do. But just forget that for a minute. Just from a pure business standpoint, how can you know what it takes from that department or what goals they should be having for themselves if you're not tracking the conversion all the way through to closing? And that takes the feedback. It also gives you great intel for training. So for example, we had this spreadsheet that I started and we started working on together, but it basically said this guy was supposed to come in on this day and meet Annalisa, And we use that as the, hey, what happened? Let's look at the spreadsheet. What happened with this guy? What happened with that guy? What happened with this person? And if they didn't sign, we just had a conversation about, well, why? And it wasn't even the intention of the spreadsheet, but it started becoming the training tool of finding trends. So there was a while where we realized, I'm trying to remember the details of it, but if we were the last appointment, I think it was, they were canceling if they were meeting other agents before us. I don't know that we would have caught that trend had it not been for the feedback. And then it can also tell you if she's telling me, hey, this guy, the reason he didn't sign is he couldn't clear his mortgage. That tells me, okay, I didn't pre-qualify them correctly. I need to do a better job. And so that feedback is essential. I don't know how you can have extreme success in this without the feedback. You've got to have the feedback.
Absolutely. I mean, that just goes into make sure you realize that you are a team.
Yeah.
I never would have succeeded without an awesome ISA group behind me. And vice versa. And that feedback, like Anna is saying, is absolutely vital to the whole team's success.
Yes. Yeah. It became, the spreadsheet kind of started out of frustration, to be quite honest with you, of I don't know what's happening with the leads. Let's just start putting them in a spreadsheet. Well, I remember there was a turning point where Haro started coming and saying, hey, can you pull up that spreadsheet? Let's see what the reasons are. People aren't signing. And we got so much data from that. So it was really helpful. Let's see. We also talked about pre-qual. Do you guys have questions about pre-qual? Let's check the chat box real quick. So it looks like a lot of you say you do have a pre-qual sheet completely filled out. And actually, I want to highlight that. Hey, Christina, it's good to see you. There was a standard of if this sheet is not filled out, it's not an appointment. So I remember when Haro first started training me, if I gave him a sheet, a seller pre-qualification sheet, and pieces of it were missing, he would give it back and say, call that client back and get the rest of the information so that he could be prepared. So I'm glad, Christina, to see you say that. Let's see what else. Are you willing to list? Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Are you willing to list if Taylor comes out? Absolutely. You should be asking questions like that. Awesome. Motivation. That's a huge one.
The biggest, I would say.
Yeah. So help people out, because I think sometimes motivation, depending on our wiring, some people are more curious to learn motivation about a client, and some people more just want to go straight to the data. Tell us why motivation matters, because sometimes it just seems like it can take forever to dig into that.
Yeah, it totally can. And like I already have alluded to, I'm the get it done type girl.
Yes.
But I will tell you, the clients that I took on that I didn't really know why they wanted to sell were some of my hardest deals. I had one guy who was just a bear in the consult. But the more that I got him talking about why he wanted to sell his house, the more he softened. And at the very end of it, it was, if he sells his house, he can take all of his siblings on an Alaskan cruise. And that's something that they've dreamed about doing with their parents before their parents passed, and they never got to. So do you think that I had trouble with him throughout the whole process when things got tough? No way, because we were on the exact same page about why this was important to him. So yeah, I mean, do not skip that part. And that is one of the things I had to learn really well, not being wired that way, was that if I don't know that motivation, what I'm doing really is going to be 100 times harder.
Yeah. And it can be tricky because you can set an appointment sometimes easily without motivation. So you can have this false sense of security, like, oh, I got the appointment, we're good. However, we all know that buying and selling a house is one of the most stressful. It's listed as one of the top 3 most stressful things you can go through. It's not a 5-minute process. And so maybe you can set an appointment without motivation. You shouldn't. Yet now what do you do if 3 months later they're like, I'm just tired of this process? How can you remind them about the Alaskan cruise with their siblings, right? And so it's so important. I also want to go back to trust real quick, and then we'll answer some of your questions. I see some questions about what's the scripts for the handoff, so we'll get into that in 1 second. As far as trust, something that helped on my end with setting appointments for her is I knew her commitment to learning her craft. I remember there was some class you took that had nothing to do with the market center or anything. It was a negotiation class.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't required. It was just something that she on her own said, if I'm a listing agent, I'm going to take this negotiation class. And she did. that gave me so much confidence in setting appointments for her because again, my money's on the line. Haro's money is on the line because he's paid for these leads. Her money's on the line. And knowing her dedication to learning her job gave that trust. One thing they do at the Haro Group with Katie, I remember Katie telling us about this, and we'll have to interview her on one of these webinars. But she was actually not allowed to go on listings by herself until she tested out in front of the team, which I think is a great idea.
That's awesome.
But what they did is Tim understood the whole team needs to trust Katie because without trust,
that's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So Katie told me she I don't know if it actually was a closet, the way she described it, that's what I picture in my head, was basically a closet with scripts all over the wall. And she had to go in that room and basically just study scripts, get them in her brain. She went on a ton of listing appointments with Tim where she watched him deliver the presentation. Then they did it together. Then she would deliver and Tim would watch and not say anything. And then she had to test out in front of the team. Her first year, she took 144 listings. Her first year. But before she was released to be on her own, they had a meeting with all of the agents, and Katie and Tim sat up front, and Tim threw every objection at her, really just ran her through the ringer with what could possibly come up. And she had to navigate it well enough that the team was like, all right, we trust her. And then she went out on her own. Think about the trust.
Wow.
And she took 144 her first year. That's amazing. So I think that's a great practical idea of how you can build that trust. And then as the ISAs, they need to bring it. I'm sure you would lose trust if you weren't getting pre-qualification sheets filled out. Putting myself in an agent's shoes, that would be actually pretty aggravating if I had my calendar getting filled up and then they weren't quality. So make sure on the ISA side, we're doing the same thing. It's definitely teamwork here.
Absolutely.
So anything to add on that stuff before we dive into the questions?
I feel like you hit it well.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. So let's hit the questions. Taylor, it looks like, what are the scripts for a great handoff? I have one. Do you have any that come to mind?
Tell me what yours is.
Look at that nice open-ended question. All right. So my favorite one is the nurse-doctor analogy. Is that the one you're thinking of? Okay. So we all know when we go to the doctor, the nurse doesn't tell us anything, right? She's taking our vital signs. She's checking our blood pressure. She's hearing our symptoms. She probably knows what's wrong with us if she's an experienced nurse. But we all know if we say, hey, what do you think's wrong with me? She's going to say, well, wait till the doctor comes in. He'll talk to you about it. So I find that to be a really good analogy for ISAs to agents. So say I'm cultivating a lead. On the front end, at the beginning of our relationship, I'm going to establish, think of me kind of like the nurse. So my job is to hear all about your situation, kind of diagnose the gist of what's going on, ask you a whole lot of questions. And what I'm going to do is take note on everything you're telling me and document it. And you're actually going to meet with Analeisa. Think of her like the doctor. She's the listing agent, and she's the one that ultimately will be taking care of you. She'll be giving you the solutions to what needs to happen, and she'll take you from there on out. So I'm the nurse, she's the doctor. That made it a lot easier because they understood, don't ask Anna a lot of questions because she can't tell me. If they did, I would say, I'll write that down. Analeisa will hit that when you meet with her. And also, I think comparing her to the doctor, again, just added to that credibility. And it was something that they could relate to.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is, like, she was talking about building me up. Obviously, when I heard that, it made me feel good. But it also, that was the handoff to make them realize that, like, I was amazing, essentially, is what that came down to. So that being part of the handoff, I think, is extremely important.
Yeah. And I mean, even now, I'll have friends ask me from time to time, hey, I want to buy an investment property. Do you want to be my agent? And I still feel this way. I'm a licensed agent. I technically could do that. You don't want me to do that. I've never written a contract, but Analeisa, you want her to do it. She's got way more experience than I do. And so I find even just kind of joking with them and, you know, mirror and match their personality. But if they're relaxed and kind of laughing with you, just say, listen, you do not want me to answer that question, but Analeisa, she'll take great care of that. But you don't want me to do that. And I just find that builds some rapport, gets some laughing, and again, points to she's the one. She's the one you want to talk to. And that's the best way to do that. Okay, so hopefully that helped you out, Taylor. Let's see. Where can we find a copy of the pre-qual sheet? So We can post that. What I'll do is, if you're not already in the ISA Mastermind Group, join it. It's Facebook, ISA Mastermind Group. We'll post it in the files section. So if you could remind me, we'll post it in the files section after this call, and that way you can download it. It really, though, just comes from Bold. So if you've gone to Bold, we basically just took the Bold pre-qual script and added blanks with room to write. And that's pretty much it. And that's what got filled out. What's the average conversion for inbound leads received to appointment set? So any of these that you want to take a jab at?
Yeah, I feel like of late, I feel like of late at the Haro Group, it's for received to appointment set is like maybe around the 60% mark, but I could be totally off. Does that sound horrible?
Well, it's probably like, do you mean set to taken? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, set to taken.
Okay.
So this is
received to appointment set. Okay.
So here's the thing. It depends on what the lead source is. So you can receive a lead from Zillow. You can receive a lead from Google. You can receive a lead from Boomtown. There's all different sources. So let me reread the question, make sure. Average conversion from inbound to received. So look at your lead source. If you could type in, Catherine, if there's a specific lead source you're asking, I can tell you what the national average is. In general, they usually say 2.5% to 3% initially. So what I mean by that is a lot of inbound leads, if they're coming in on a website, they're just starting the process and a little more casual. Now, if they're calling you, that's a lot more serious, right? So it's usually like 2.5%, 3% off of a website. However, over time, more of those will convert. It's just, you got to nurture them for a while. So I hope that answers your question. Yet, if you can be more specific with lead source, we could answer that a lot better. Okay, so Ryan says, how can ISAs help agents get contracts signed after the appointment's been held?
Yeah.
So basically, they don't sign the first time in the meeting. And we're talking about the I'm hiring you contract, the agency contract. So tell us what idea.
I mean, I distinctly remember specific clients who I either didn't feel like I connected super well with in the consult, or I couldn't get them on the phone afterwards when they asked me to follow up. And I'd be like, Anna, from your notes, like, you guys could be BFFs. Can you please, like, call from a different number, take it from a different angle, maybe find out if there was something they didn't like about me, or about what I said. Like, there's just a different kind of rapport that was built up front. That was helpful, and often I would rope her in. And even sometimes when transactions got a little difficult, if I knew that Anna had really hit it off with a certain individual, hey, can you just call and check in? I feel like things are low on the outs. Whatever you can do there. And those calls often went a long way with the client too.
Yeah. And I think that's where you can call, if you're the ISA calling, and just say, hey, you can just play kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, I know you met with Analeisa yesterday. How'd it go? What did you think? What questions do you have? And really just dig into what's going on and put your sales hat back on. One of my favorite questions, so write this one down, is what would have to happen for you to fill in the blank? So you could call and say, hey, what would have to happen for you to be comfortable working with Analeisa? Now, that's also a great question on the front end when you're setting it, because let's just figure that out now, and then she can do or say whatever that thing was if it is in alignment with how we operate. So what would have to happen for you to be comfortable working with Analeisa would be a great follow-up question after they did not sign. And I remember there would be times that we would take the spreadsheet of appointments that were set, and if people didn't sign, it wouldn't just be like this automatic, well, they go back to you or you keep them.
No.
It would be, well, which one of us had the most rapport with that person?
Yes.
And that was usually the deciding factor. It wasn't just they always came back to me or she always kept them. It would depend on the relationship that was built. Okay, let's keep reading questions. A website and sign calls. I would say expect 2.5% to 3% on that, Catherine. And then it could go up over time. So that would be a starting point. The main thing, though, is make sure you're tracking your numbers so that you know your numbers. National averages are great. Yet what if you're higher than average? You're lower than average, right? So just make sure you're tracking your numbers so that you know for yourself where you stand on that. Okay. Do you have the agent call and have a conversation with the client, or is the first conversation when they meet at the listing appointment? It wasn't always exactly the same.
No, I tried most of the time to have a conversation with them on the phone, and it was more of like, hey, Anna, I know Anna set this appointment up for us to meet, kind of confirming type things. And then also if there were any questions in my mind of information that have been given to me, let me just clarify this with you while we're on the phone, so that I can be prepared to use your time the most efficiently when you do come in. So I did try really hard to have a conversation with everybody before I met them in the office.
Yeah, and I think part of it too depends on how far out the appointment is. If the appointment's today or tomorrow, there might not really be a need. But if it's more than 48 hours out, one of us would call, and it was to remind them of the appointment because we wanted to make sure that they remembered. It wasn't to confirm, because confirm gives that idea you can still get out of it. Yet a reminder. And then it also can be a great, hey, have you had any more questions between now and then? So I remember the language was, if the appointment was, say, 3 days out, in setting it, it would be, hey, the day before your appointment, we'll call just to remind you, and also see what other questions pop up between now and then. So if you think of anything between now and then, just write it down. And when we call you to remind you, you can tell us what else you want to make sure we cover. And that worked really well.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, Catherine says we always have the agent call to introduce themselves. Yeah, I think that's great. It can build some rapport before they come in if there's the bandwidth. And then just remember, it's a reminder versus confirmation. I don't know about you guys, but when I buy a plane ticket online, I'm like, is it for real? I don't know if it went through. But once I get confirmation, then I'm like, okay, I'm good. So if you're setting the expectation of, I'll confirm with you later, that's almost like saying, hey, the appointment that we just committed to isn't for real until I confirm it. And they can still feel like they can weasel out. So what you say is, hey, let's commit to a time and then we'll remind you versus confirm. All right, Christie, what's the minimum time frame of the client wanting to make the move that the ISA should decide whether to extend? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is a really good one.
I
would say that one's super situational. If I'm understanding the question, if you have a really high C client who is not going to want to be doing either side without knowing the entire picture, then do them both at the same time as early as you need to. But definitely situational there. And I don't know what you'd add to that.
Yeah, I think know your team bandwidth. So there was a time we would change our standards sometimes. So meaning if Annalisa is new and needs a lot of listings, maybe we'll set appointments with people that are further out. But then when we're short staffed and we need to hire another listing agent and her hair is on fire, now instead of meeting with people that are 6 months out, let's just set appointments for people that are 3 months out. Right. So I hope that's answers the other side of your question. So the general standard was if they're a listing client and within 6 months, meet them. And part of that is we all know it can take a while to get their house ready. You've got staging. There's a lot to do to get a house ready. Right. Let's just meet them and lock it down. And the verbiage for that was, we know you want to list in 6 months. Let's go ahead and meet and create a game plan. And that way you're not stressed and having all this last minute stuff. Let's meet now and get the process going so it's a lot smoother for you. And then on the buyer side, usually 3 months or less, go ahead and meet. And part of that is when you meet, and also because she's awesome and agents are awesome, they might turn into, okay, I'm a lot more excited now that I've met with you. I'll sell it in 3 months versus 6. And that's one reason for that. But you do kind of have to know your bandwidth. So it's technically time to be done. However, we still have questions. I'm good to hang out for 15 more minutes. All right. So we'll keep hanging out here and answering more questions, and we'll cut off hard in 15 minutes. Okay. How do you assign listing and buyer leads, rotation or personality fit? That is the money question.
Yes. What a great one.
So I'm going to give my opinion. Okay. And this is an opinion. Okay. Not the only right way to do it. But I think if it can be, okay, when an ISA starts, it's rotation because they're new. They don't know the agents yet. They're still getting their skill under their belt. I think it works really well to just have it on a straight rotation. But remember I said there was a spreadsheet where I would go to the agents and say, hey, did this person sign? Hey, did that person sign? Let me tell you, I kind of uncovered in doing that there were times that there were consistently people that were not getting the signature. And that's the Haro Group's money. Because remember, they're paying for these leads that aren't getting the signature. It's also my income. It's also that client getting taken care of, right? So if there's a consistent person that's just not getting it done, then we go into training mode, and now more of them get funneled out to other people. And it's kind of like, if you want the privilege of having appointments set for you, you need to have the conversion and the follow-up. So I'm of the opinion that when you start, rotation's fine. And as you get to know your agents, you can start deciding, okay, this needs to go to this person based off the personality fit, or based off conversion rate, I'm going to give this to Analeisa because her conversion rate's higher. So you can have some variance based on skill. What do you think about that?
I think that's awesome. And also I would say too, if you know that a client is like an investor and you have people who work best with investors, like obviously, you're going to fit that way for sure.
Yeah. Like Tim on our team, great with investors. Nate on our team, he's really, really good with people that need patience.
Yes,
he's a lot more patient than either one of us. So if there's somebody that needs a lot of patience and someone that's willing to listen, Nate. If it's an investor, Tim. And they both convert. And it really can be a good motivator from a training standpoint. It's not meant to be a harsh thing to say, okay, I'm not going to set appointments for you for a while, but it's a motivator because they want appointments. And so let's get your conversion back up. Let's talk about these people that didn't sign and figure out what's going on there. And then you can start getting appointments again. So there's no right or wrong to that. That's my opinion. At the end of the day, figure out what works best for your team. All of this though takes tracking. How can you know who's converting and who's not? Again, without the feedback loop, without tracking your numbers, you have to track. All right. How long do you build up the agent on the phone? Do you pre-qual or another team member? So we find the least amount of handoffs is better.
Yes.
And I also think if you're going to hire an ISA, let's equip them to do their job 100%. Now, depending on the state, there might be some things they can do or ask or not do or not ask. So again, I think it's great to have your ISA be licensed. You don't have to do it that way. I know some states they can make call. I wasn't licensed for the first year. But that also meant I couldn't earn commission. And so my earning potential was better and I was allowed to ask more questions and even explain more things once I was licensed. So Christina, my opinion is if they're going to be in this role, let's get them going. Let's get them trained to do it 100%. Remember, that's their one thing is to lead generate and lead convert. Also, I find that people respond better to appointments and it helps with show rate if you do the pre-qual. It's kind of like if I go to the doctor, if he asks me no questions and writes me a prescription, I'm thinking, do you even know what's wrong with me? But if the doctor asks me a lot of questions, in fact, the more questions he asks me, I feel more confident in his ability to take care of me. Well, it's the same thing. And so if an ISA is setting an appointment, let's have him do it right. They need to find out motivation. They need to ask all the questions on the pre-qualification sheet. And that will actually in turn build confidence in the client that these people know what they're doing. And the less handoffs, the better. Now there would be times that I fill out the pre-qual sheet, hang up and run a really quick comp. I never told the client, here's what I think your house is worth. But before I gave it to Annalisa, it would be a quick, let me just run the numbers and see if they're insane or if they're logical. And there would be times I would say, look, I ran quick numbers. I don't know. I think it's close. You do this more than I do. So if you think it needs to get canceled, that's fine. I don't know. And I think that's fine.
No, absolutely. And I liked Anna bringing that to my attention of like, I went one step really like further to be even more thorough for you. And I'm like, probably not seeing this because that gave me confidence, that she was actually really trying to qualify people well. But also kind of a highlight on, I need to really look into this one, maybe a little more thoroughly before I have the appointment, just to be sure we're on the same page.
And let's be clear too, ISAs don't need to, nor should they be spending an enormous amount of time running comps because that's not the one thing. And if they're a good ISA, you want them on the phone, actually making appointments, not running comps. However, I also want to make sure that I know enough of the comp to know if they're really crazy. Because again, my job is to be the bouncer and protect her time. And so what that would look like is just a really quick comp. Maybe I don't put in, they have hardwood floors and all this other stuff, but I at least put in their neighborhood name and what's the average price in their neighborhood. And if it's 300 and this person's telling me they think it's worth 400.
Mm.
Now I know when I'm pre-qualifying. So what makes you think your house is worth 400? It sounds like more than average in your neighborhood. Just tell me what justifies that in your mind. And that's part of the pre-qual. Okay. Let's see. Help me think through which questions we should answer here, because I don't know if we'll get to all of them. How long do you build up the agent on the phone? Oh, we already did that.
Yep.
At what point do you use the script? What, if you could type in, I'm not sure how to say your name. I think it's Darien Valley. At what point do you use that script? Just, if you could say which one. I think we've just moved on. I'm not sure which script you're messaging. Yeah, trust me, I haven't been in production in 2 years. Let me get you connected to the expert. Awesome.
Yeah. Who do you recommend nurtures the client if they're not ready to list or not ready to continue looking at homes? I think that's a great question. If they've come in and met with a listing agent and there was great rapport there and the listing agent is committed to that follow-up, great. But generally, again, speaking, the ISA, it has built an extreme amount of rapport too. So I think that's situational too, and just something that you've got to practice communication on, to determine who's gonna give the best follow-up there.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think it's just situational. Like she said, I have nothing to add to that. That was really good. I was also reading questions while she answered. Okay, who do you recommend? Oh, wait, back up here. How many appointments not held would you typically have, or percentage? So I'll give you a benchmark to aim for. Is for every appointment you set, you say you set 10, you want at least 7 to actually show up. And if it's less than that, then we need to work on skill. And I actually don't want 100%. And to touch on something she said earlier about that dread of, oh, I don't want to say I didn't get that signature. Listen, this is sales, right? Yeah. If you are getting 100% conversion rates, you're not trying hard enough. And what I mean by that, I'm going to use a basketball analogy. But Kobe Bryant and Will Chamberlain, regardless of what you think of these people, just go with me here. So Kobe Bryant is actually a better basketball player. When he takes a shot at a basket, a higher percentage of his go in. It's proven. However, in a basketball game, his highest points ever were 81. The highest he ever scored in a game was 81, which is amazing. In an NBA game to score 81 points by one guy, that's ridiculous. However, Will Chamberlain was not as skilled, meaning if he shot a basket, a higher percentage did not go in. However, he took more chances. He took more shots. He took more opportunity that he wasn't sure if he would make it, and he just took the shot anyway. His highest point in the game is 100. So he's beating Kobe Bryant by 19 points. That's a huge lead. And actually, Kobe is more skilled, but Will Chamberlain took more opportunity. And so the thing I want to encourage you, if you're hearing this and you're an agent thinking, oh man, now I'm realizing the weight of closing these deals, don't go for 100. Don't go for perfection here. If you have 100% conversion rate, you actually probably need to set more appointments and go out and meet more people, because you could be netting more in the long run by getting out in front of more people. So hope that makes sense. But yeah, appointments set to scene, 70% is your benchmark. In our coaching program, we've seen people come in. I'm thinking of a team right now. They came in at 40%, meaning for every 10 appointments, 4 showed up. Not real great. Within 2 weeks, we got them to 80%. So that is one thing I want to highlight real quick, is we're going to do these webinars from time to time where we give information, and just, we really want to help you guys out. And as you're probably realizing, this is a lot to know. It's a lot to keep track. There's a lot of systems to figure out, and that's why we both coach for the ISA coaching program. So if you want more information in that, go to isamapscoaching.com, and there's a button that says Get Started, and that will actually kick you to either me, Annalisa, or somebody else from our coaching team, and we'll hop on the phone with you and just chat about what's going on with your team. Is this program a right fit for you at this time? And just go from there. So if you click Get Started, I think that's what it says. It's isamapscoaching.com. That'll allow us to know that you want to talk with one of us, and we'll connect with you. Also, somebody asked, Kristen, you said, where are these webinars recorded and how do we find them? That's also at isamapscoaching.com. We might be starting a YouTube channel, so just stay tuned. We'll announce it. But for now, just go to isamapscoaching.com, and you can find this webinar as well as past webinars that we've done on there. Okay, let's go back to the questions. We've got about 4 more minutes. Okay, what are your ISAs tracking? Everybody write this down. Write this down. So this is not just ISAs, by the way. This should be agents as well. Everybody. So ISA should be tracked. I'll tell you what to track, and I'll tell you what the goal percentage should be. So get ready to write. I'll give you another second. Okay. All right. So they should be tracking dial to contact. Now here's the deal. There should never really be this big goal to have a certain number of dials. What we want is contacts. But the reason we track dial to contact is it tells us if we're calling a good list. That's the value. So you want a 12% or higher conversion rate. So if you're calling 100 people and less than 12% of them are picking up, we need a different list. This isn't a good list to be calling. It's a waste of time. It's a lot of work for very little return. It could be time of day. It could be the list. So don't just throw out the list. You know, if you're calling them Friday night at 5 o'clock, it's probably just a bad time. Could be a great list. So dial to contact, 12% or higher. Contact to set, meaning I had a conversation with somebody and then they actually turned into an appointment set. 5% is the goal. That's 1 out of 20. Now, listen when I say this. This is really important. It depends on your lead source. So if I'm calling neighborhood call where it's circle, and I'm basically just calling a neighborhood totally blind, hey, we have a lot of buyers that want your area. Do you have a house to sell? Okay, 1 out of 20 is not going to happen. Usually that's more like 1 out of 75 or 1 out of 100. That's the average. So I'm going to give you an answer for that, and don't make sure you're contemplating your lead sources. So when I say 1 out of 20 or 5%, that's kind of like the catch-all for all the lead sources combined. So I'm calling a little bit of FSBO, I'm calling some inbound leads, I'm dealing with some sign calls, maybe I'm circle calling for 30 minutes. So just make sure you know your lead source. So we have dial to contact, then we have contact to set. Now set to held, meaning I set the appointment and they actually showed up. We already talked about that should be 70%. Held to signed. Now Analeisa got 90%. You would be doing really good to have between 70 and 80. They say buyer signs are less. MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, says 65%. Honestly, I think that's crazy low. Even on our buyer side, 90% or higher sign. I think it's because people don't ask. That's what I think. I think people are out showing houses without asking for an agency agreement. That's what I think it is. On the seller side, the average is 80% signature. But again, through great scripting, she always had 90%. So those are your benchmarks. So held to sign, buyer 65, seller 80, and I think they can be higher. And then signed to closed 80%. So to simplify it, dial, contact, set, held, signed, closed. Did I just say that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks, Christina. You just made my day. All right, guys. Well, listen, you have a really great day. If we missed any of these, just go and go to ISA Maps Coaching. Let us know that you want to talk with us. It doesn't go to like some mythical place out Never Never Land. You get Annalisa, me. There's a guy named Andrew on our team that's not here today yet. He's with the coaching program. So go to ISA Maps Coaching. We're happy to hop on the phone with you, talk about the program, see what you need, and then go from there. So stay tuned. We'll do more of these from time to time. And check out that Facebook group, ISA Mastermind Group, and we'll upload the sheet there for you guys to check out. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you at family reunion.
Yes.